Welcome, everyone, to the first installment of Riscosity's Lightning Interview Series. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you Nauzer Gotla, Vice President of Internal Audit at Nextracker, the industry leader in solar tracking solutions. Thanks for joining us, Nauzer.
Thanks, Jackson.
Thanks. So getting right into it, first question, what would be your first piece of advice for a new VP of Internal Audit?
I think it's important to kind of focus on the role a little bit. And the way I see it, and this is my third head of audit gig. I've started internal audit from scratch at my last three organizations. I think the most important piece of advice is really take the time, all the time you need to really understand what the risk profile of the company looks like. And really center yourself with respect to what that positioning is from a risk perspective of the company, and then define all of the pieces of work that you need to do based off of that understanding. And so I think it's super critical that heads of audit, talks to, functional owners, risk owners, the CEO, the second in command, the COO, the head of IT, to really unearth what are our top 3 risks, what are our top 5 risks, and what are our top 10 risks, so on and so forth, and really build out that understanding from the ground up to say, at the end of the day, I think given where the company is in its stage of maturity, given its business, given how it makes money, given how it spends money, given how investors really look at the company, given how CFOs and CEOs really manage expectations on the street, what are some of the roadblocks to meeting their business objectives? And really understanding risks from a roadblock perspective and understanding our role as heads of audit to really help the business unblock those roadblocks and help the business meet its objective is super critical to understand that mindset and have that mindset right from the get-go. And I think that would be my biggest piece of advice for new heads of audits, to really understand risk, really understand, what the imperatives of the company are, really understand where the roadblocks are, and then go devise what your plan is to unblock those roadblocks.
Thanks, Nauzer. So continuing on that theme, when you think about working with all these stakeholders, everyone you have to manage, to get through the roadblocks, what do you feel like is the biggest misconception that business leaders have about internal audit teams?
Sure. I mean, through my experiences, and I say this a lot to a lot of my stakeholders in conversations, I say this to my own team members to verbalize this, and it really helps a lot where people understand our job as internal auditors. We're not here to write traffic tickets. That's not our role at all. And unfortunately, people see us a lot with that light because they come with all sorts of auditor PTSD from previous organizations and previous experiences with auditors. I think specific to internal audit, we really have to break that stigma early on. And of course, walk the walk as well, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk as well, which is really collaborate with the business to find and solve problems and make them successful at what their business objectives are. So I think the biggest misconception is we're here to write traffic tickets, and that's not what we do. That's not what we are meant to do. That's not what we were ever meant to do. It's quite the opposite, which is really help the business meet its objectives.
Yeah, it's such a powerful message. It's cliche to say, work together, don't treat audit as the bad cop, but just time and time and again, it pays such dividends, and we see that as well. As you think about the role of an internal audit team, there's so many jobs to cover, but how do you feel like it's evolving the fastest? Where do you see the biggest changes?
I think the biggest changes are just the way internal auditors and the function views what new horizons are and has their basic methodology in place with respect to assessing new and emerging risks. I think our ability to see through the horizon or look around the corner or whatever fancy term there is to really describe having the ability to figure out and extrapolate what's coming next or what could come next, I think is our true power, and is in the area that we should be evolving if we're not evolving the greatest possible extent, and really helping businesses understand that, if you're going into a new country and if this is the line of work that we plan to do, and if these are the imperatives in that country, therefore, we can draw logical conclusions about what we might expect to see in terms of risks, and really articulating that effectively, and helping management understand that risk effectively so that they can put all of the right steps in place to mitigate risk or to minimize risk. So I think our ability to really look around the corner is our greatest ability, quite frankly, and is our ticket to really staying on top of what's coming next. I think that's really powerful in terms of what needs to improve or what is improving.
Thank you. And now turning a bit more to data specifically, as you think about data security and data privacy, where do you see the biggest intersection points with the audit practices?
I think the whole advent of IA and how IA is being currently used, and how IA is leveraged with the levels of freedom that it is leveraged today, I think the intersection of privacy and the usage of data is ever more important than before. And understanding, just inventorizing the types of data that you have, understanding what a data classification policy needs to look like or lack thereof. Lots of companies don't have formal data classification policies that says, I classify my data into type 1, type 2, and type 3, and here's why. But more importantly, I'm also defining levels of protection for my type 1 because I consider it top secret, which is different from protections that I would apply to level 2, which is different than what I would apply to level 3 for different reasons. So having that thought process built out really builds that intersection between the usage, collection, and storage of data, sharing of data, all of the various mechanisms of sharing of data. And, that's where APIs become so critically important to really understand how does that entire usage style intersect with people's requirements for privacy, or organizations or regulatory requirements for privacy, and making sure that that all fits correctly. So I think our job as auditors, or our jobs as people who find problems and help the business solve problems, seeing it in that fashion, breaking it down into that fashion really helps.
Mm-hmm. And as you're, whether it's in your own org or as you think about newer teams coming up, what's the low-hanging fruit, that you feel like small teams should be addressing first in their security and privacy practices?
I think, again, regardless of size of teams, I think it's incumbent on folks like the CISO or heads of security to really understand what the security posture of the company needs to look like. Understanding threat surface areas, understanding threat vectors, understanding, where could data leak out the door, where could I be mishandling data, for example, where can I be sharing data with somebody I shouldn't be sharing, or types of data that shouldn't be going out, or types of data that shouldn't be coming into the company. Really understanding what that risk profile looks like, and then building out the appropriate mechanisms and making sure like the technology that is used to facilitate all of that truly has baked in the right levels of control to ensure that those types of risks are taken care of. API is a classic example where you have data ingress and egress in terms of, do organizations have the appropriate line of sight in terms of what data is going out and what data is coming in? That's the first question. Lots of companies don't have that line of sight, or they have a partial line of sight. It's not complete, or it's not completely reliable. And then building out the levels of mechanism that you would need to keep those lines of sight secure, and keep a good line of sight in terms of the controls that are required to sit at that level, to prevent the wrong types of egresses and the wrong types of ingresses.
Yeah, such a powerful message. Just such basic visibility and control. The core hygiene that makes it all work.
Yep.
One final bonus question for you. as you think about Gen AI, I'm curious how that's changed your role, or how it's changing your role, and any new challenges, or yeah, whatever is most important to you when it comes to the future with AI.
I mean, that's a tough one, and that's something that we're all, still understanding and still figuring out. So that I mean, I don't have an answer per se for it, but I
Mm.
think, just using my traditional auditor sniff test and understanding the what could go wrongs with the use of generative AI. I think that's my biggest tool as an auditor. I don't know what generative AI tools can do. I mean, I have an understanding, but it's not
Yeah,
exhaustive
yeah,
and it's not very comprehensive for the simple reason is not because I've not taken the time to understand it, but because there's so much to understand and there's so much to explore and there's so much to wait and see a little bit in terms of what it can do. Because the more you understand it, the more questions it's raised with respect to, okay, is it possible for this to happen? Is it possible for that to happen? And that's where we don't have, a solid answer with respect to yes or no. So it makes the whole risk mitigation piece a little bit also formative, if you will, because as our understanding and as our ability to discern with respect to what generative AI tools can do
mhm,
and what they're capable of, it will help you understand the guardrails that you need to put in place in order for its appropriate use and for the controls that need to be in place to still have a strong control environment. I think our understanding is still nascent, and as it matures over time, I think our understanding of the guardrails and the safety nets that need to be around its usage will also mature and will also improve. Right now, I think we're still in the process of figuring it all out.
it's the hard truth many probably don't want to share, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Nauzer, for taking the time, and I'm sure our audience is going to appreciate it too.
Sure. Thank you, Jackson. Appreciate the opportunity.